All right, friends, welcome back. Act 2 of Julius Caesar. You notice I am wearing the same outfit because it is the same day. I'm going to try to do as much as possible so I don't have to get out of my sweatpants again. Because remote learning is all about wearing sweatpants all day. But I got showered and dressed for you for these videos in case they show up somewhere that they shouldn't. So I can talk to you about Caesar and get excited because I'm excited. I love Caesar. All right, so Act 2 is when we start getting all excited about what we're going to do for Caesar, how we're going to get rid of him. So it starts out in Rome, and we are at Brutus's house. So we're at Brutus's house. We're on like his, I don't know, balcony or whatever. And he's outside talking to himself, because if he were not talking to himself, how would we know what he were thinking? So he says, Carla, not mine. First of all, I know no personal cause to spurn at Caesar. I have nothing personally against him. But for the general, he would be crowned. But for the general public, he would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. So how that might change what he is doing, that's the question. So that car alarm is still going off. So I'm pretty sure it's not mine, but I'm gonna take a break just a second. Yeah, not mine. Anyway, okay, so I don't have any personal reason not to like Caesar, but for the good of Rome, I have to think about how he might change if he were to get this power. So he's talking to himself and whatever, and he comes up with this analogy. Therefore think him as a serpent's egg, which hatched would as his kind grow mischievous and kill him in the shell. So he is saying that Caesar is a serpent's egg. Eggs are not dangerous. You can scramble them. That would be the end of them, okay? But when a serpent's egg hatches, then you have a serpent, and that's a problem. So you need to kill him before he hatches, before he gets enough power to be dangerous. Otherwise, if you wait until he is too powerful, you won't have any recourse. You won't be able to do anything. So Caesar is a serpent's egg right now. He is not dangerous, but if he becomes dangerous and hatches, it will be too late. You will not be able to do anything about it. So at this point, his servant, Lucius, comes in and he says that he has found some letters, random places around the property. We know that they were written by Cassius because Cassius told us that at the end of Act 1. But Brutus doesn't know that. And so he reads them, and the letter says, Brutus, thou sleeps, awake and see thyself, blah, 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 blah. If Brutus were thinking at all, he would know that this is the exact same thing that Cassius just said to him about being able to see his face and whatever. But he's not thinking about it. So he sees that basically the Roman people, or whoever the letter writer is asking Brutus to stand up for the Roman people against Caesar. And he mentions it enough that Brutus gets it in his mind, but not so much that he feels like he's being told what to do. We all know those people who it has to be their idea for them to think it's a good idea. And that's a little bit the way Brutus is. He wants it to be his idea. And so Cassius does not tell him what to do. He just hints at it enough that he gets these ideas in his head. And then he thinks they're his ideas, and it works out fine. So he says, O Rome, I make thee promise, if the redress will follow, thou receivest thy full petition at the hand of Brutus. So he said, if it has to be addressed, I will do it. He doesn't necessarily say yet that he thinks it has to be addressed, but if it does have to be addressed, he will do it. He says, since Cassius did first wet me against Caesar, I have not slept. So he has not been able to sleep because he's worrying about the stuff that Cassius has got into his head. And so Lucius comes back and he says, Brutus, there's a bunch of people at the door, and they have their hats pulled down over their faces and their cloaks up here. Oh, they've got like these masks over their faces so you can't see them, and they're just looking all shady and whatever. Nice prop, huh? I didn't even plan for that. Anyway, and I can't even tell who they are. They're just acting super shady. Brutus is like, all right, tell them to come in. And he says, guys, to himself, of course, they're not there yet. Where wilt thou find a cavern dark enough to mask thy monstrous visage? So you're not going to find a dark enough corner or alleyway to hide what it is you are up to. So instead, you should hide it in smiles and affability. So if you want to not get in trouble, you need to act cool, act natural, be normal. Quit acting like you're up to something. People are going to think you're up to something. So they all show up. Cassius, Casca, Decius, Cinna, Metellus Cimber, and Trebonius. So these are all of the men who will make up the conspiracy. Plus Brutus, eventually, maybe. Okay, and so they're like, hey, sorry, we just showed up on your doorstep at like 3 o'clock in the morning. He's like, it's fine. Who is here? Who are these people? Because they're all, remember, have their coats down, their clothes. Anyway, he says, do I know these people? To Cassius. And Cassius says, yes, and no man here but honors you, and everyone doth wish you had but that opinion of yourself which every noble Roman bears of you. So again, with the flattery, he's like, yes, you know all of these people, they love you, they think you're great, and they just wish that you knew how wonderful and powerful you were. Brutus is like, all right, here we go again. So he introduces each of them. And then Cassius and Brutus step to the side, and they have what is called an aside. They go over there and talk to each other, and basically nobody hears them. They're just having a little secret conversation. Then we have Decius and Casca and Cinna, and they're having this conversation over the top of whatever secret conversation is happening over here, so they can't hear. And they're just arguing about which way is east. This little part here means nothing. It's just to cover up the conversation that's happening over here. Then Brutus and Cassius come back, and Brutus says, give me your hands all over one by one. And he shakes hands with all of them. So we can assume that this means that he will join the conspiracy. And so at this point, Cassius has created this group in order to essentially get power for himself, because he cares mostly about himself, not their own people like Brutus says. But notice the shift of power the minute Brutus comes in. So Cassius says, let us swear our resolution. So he wants to swear an oath that they will do this thing. And Brutus says, no, not an oath. What need we any spur but our own cause to prick us to redress? Why do we need to swear an oath to be honest when we are honest people? That doesn't make any sense. We don't need to do that. That's stupid. And so they don't. So that's Brutus 1, Cassius 0. Then Cassius says, what about Cicero? I think maybe he would be a good person to have join our group because people trust him. He's very well known, whatever. Everybody's like, yeah, absolutely, great, good idea. But then Brutus is like, I don't think that's a good idea. Because he will never follow anything other men begin. We talked about that kind of in Brutus. He wants it to be his idea, but Brutus says this of Cicero, that if it wasn't his idea, he's not going to join it. He's not going to be part of somebody else's crew. He starts the crew. And so they say, oh yeah, you're right, we shouldn't do that. So that's Brutus 2, Cassius 0. Cassius is like, well, also, I was thinking about Mark Antony. He's Caesar's right-hand man, his little dude, whatever. We're already going to be there, have our daggers out and stuff. What if we just go ahead and kill him too? That way he won't give us any problems later. Everybody's like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Go ahead and get him out of there. Brutus is like, no, our course will seem too bloody. We don't want to seem like we're just going around and killing everybody. We need to make it clear that we have to get rid of Caesar. And in order to get rid of Caesar, there's no way to really get him out of power without killing him. If there was, we would do that, but there's not. So we have to kill him, but basically we're just like cutting him out of the problem. We don't want it to be just like stabbing everybody, okay? Let us be sacrificers, but not butchers. Let's kill him boldly, but not wrathfully. Let's carve him as a dish fit for the gods, not hew him as a carcass fit for hounds. So basically, let's take out the problem, but let's not make it crazy. So they agree with him. Brutus 3, Cassius 0. It keeps on like this. Brutus basically assumes all the power because people trust Brutus more than they trust Cassius. They know that Cassius is in it for number one, and Brutus is in it for the Roman people. So even though this was Cassius's idea, it kind of switches over now, and it is Brutus who's in charge. So Cassius balks about it, but he wins again. Okay, peace, count the clock. The clock has stricken 3. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We need an actual plan. What's gonna happen here? And so there's some doubt on whether or not Caesar will actually even go to the capital the next day, because there's been all that, like that weird storm and the soothsayer and different things that have given him this kind of superstitious vibe. I'm not superstitious, just a little stitious. Office quote, there you go. So he may not even show up. And Dees is like, I got this. I can handle it. For Caesar loves to hear that unicorns may be betrayed with trees. If you want to catch a unicorn, you stand in front of a tree. When the unicorn charges you, you duck this way, it gets its horn stuck in the tree, and you can catch the unicorn. Bears with glasses, if you want to catch a bear, he runs up to you, you hold up a mirror, and he's like, ah, bear, and runs the other way. Elephants with holes, an elephant can fall in a hole, but I'll get back out. Lions with toils or rope traps, and men with flatterers. So if you want to catch a man, you have to flatter him, get him to believe you, and then you can get him to do whatever you want. And when I tell him that he hates flatterers, he says he does, being then most flattered. So I can talk him into this, and it'll be fine. Cassius is like, yeah, it's a pretty good plan, but I think we should all be there just in case, because that won't be weird. Okay, they're going to meet at Caesar's house at 8 o'clock to make sure that he is going to go to work so that they can stab him. So Metellus says, hey, there's this guy named Caius Ligarius. He would be a really good one to include. He doesn't like Caesar very much because he got into it with him about Pompey. And he's like, yeah, have him come talk to me. Brutus says that. Have him come talk to me now, and I'll get him in the group. So, as they're getting ready to leave, Brutus says, good gentlemen, look fresh and merrily. Let not our looks put on our purposes, but bear it as our Roman actors do, with untired spirits and formal constancy, and so good morrow to each and every one. And so he's, Shakespeare's an actor. Shout out to the actors. He says, come on, be cool. Stop acting like you're up to something, because it looks like you're up to something. So be cool, act natural. You can do this. So they all leave. Now, Portia comes in. Portia is Brutus's wife, and she is legit crazy. She's a crazy person. And so she comes in and she's like, what's going on? He says nothing. She says, what's going on? He says nothing. She's like, look, tell me what's going on. And he says, it's fine, I just don't feel well. She's like, no, I don't believe that. Give me the story. You have some sick offense within your mind, which by my right and virtue of my place I ought to know of. And upon my knees I charm you, by my once commended beauty, by all your vows of love, and the great vow which did incorporate and make us one, that you unfold to me yourself, your half, why you are heavy, and what men tonight have had resort to you. For here have been some 6 or 7 who did hide their faces even from darkness. So she said, you're supposed to love me. We're supposed to be in this together. We are married. And you need to tell me what's going on. And again, he tries to pass her off and just like say, I'm sick. She's like, no, you're not. If you were, you wouldn't be standing outside in the cold. You know better. And just keeps at him and at him. And she finally is like, look, I am your wife. And I have shown you how tough I am. I gave myself a voluntary wound, stabbed myself in the leg, just to show you that I was tough enough to handle it. Yeah, that's the kind of crazy we're dealing with here. She stabbed herself in the leg just to prove she was tough enough to take it. And Brutus responds, we all know guys love crazy girls for some reason. So he says, oh, Portia, I have such a noble and honorable wife. I have forgotten how much I love you, you crazy, crazy woman. Go in. Somebody's at the door knocking. So go in the house and I will tell you what's going on as soon as this is over. So crazy lady Portia goes back in the house, and who is at the door? Caius Ligarius. Remember that guy? He's like, you should include him. He's like, yeah, tell him to come to me. Well, quick turnaround. He shows up and he's sick, like legit sick, and he has a kerchief over his face, you know, like we have now. So he puts it over his mouth. He's like, Caius, I wish you weren't sick. And Caius is like, oh, if you want me not to be sick, I just won't be sick. And he's like, you know, it's not really how that works. But Brutus says, I have something I need you to do. I need you to do this thing with me. He doesn't even tell him what it is. And Caius is like, you got it. I'm there. Brutus is a very good example of a ride or die friend. He shows up and says, get in, we got something to do. You just go because you trust Brutus. Brutus is very trusting. He has always taken care of people. And so in this way, he's someone that people would trust. So Caius shows up. He doesn't even tell him what it's about. And he's like, yeah, I'm in. I'll be there. And so that just tells you a lot about the kind of person that Brutus is. He's somebody that you really trust, or that these people really trusted. I don't know if you should trust him or not. Okay? So Act 2, Scene 1. Blank asked Blank to place a candle in the study, where we're at Brutus's house, and Brutus is talking to Lucius, who's his servant. So Brutus asked Lucius to place a candle in the study. Number 28, Brutus he's talking to himself, so we know he's the one talking, had no personal cause to hate Caesar. He says, I have no personal reason. He's not done anything to me personally. But if Caesar were crowned, he might prove dangerous. So he's worried about the Roman people in total, not himself personally, because he might be dangerous and then it might be too late. He compared, number 30, he compared Caesar to a serpent's egg. He's an egg now. Eggs aren't dangerous. You can scramble them. But when they hatch and you get a serpent, then you got problems. So he decided it would be better to smash him in the shell. So when Lucius, the servant, returned, he had found a letter. We know it was written by Cassius, but Brutus doesn't. Ever since Blank had first attempted to turn Blank against Blank, Blank had not slept, blankety blank, blank, blank. Okay, so 32. Ever since Cassius had first attempted to turn Brutus against Caesar, Brutus had not slept. I'm sorry, my hair, crazy. So Brutus is worrying, basically. He's just up worrying. Although the conspirators wanted Cicero to join them, so this is now we're talking about the actual plan with the conspirators. Although the conspirators wanted Cicero to join them, they decided against it because he would never join anything someone else started. So he's not going to agree to be part of someone else's plan. 34. When Cassius suggested killing Antony as well as Caesar, Brutus objected. So Cassius thinks, while we're there, go ahead and take out Antony so he doesn't cause problems later. And Brutus says no, that would be too much. Blank asserted that Blank could do nothing after Blank had been killed. Brutus says that Antony is basically powerless after Caesar is dead. Antony has no power himself. It's all about Caesar. So it would be like cutting off the head and then cutting off the arms. Antony is like Caesar's arm. Once you cut Caesar's head off, the arm's not going to do you much problem. So he says we don't need to worry about that. Brutus asserted that Antony could do nothing after Caesar had been killed. When Blank expressed fear that Blank would not come to the Senate, Blank promised to persuade him. So Cassius brings up the fact that Caesar has been kind of nervous, superstitious, and he might not show up. And Decius says that he will persuade him. He's gonna, the whole unicorn in the tree thing. But then they decide that they will all show up just in case. After the conspirators left, Portia entered and asked Brutus to tell her about the plot. Tells him that I stabbed myself in the leg to prove how tough I was. He says, I love you, you crazy woman. And so Brutus replied that he would tell her later, inform her later, because somebody's at the door. It's Caius Ligarius. He joins the group. Okay? Good. All right. Scene 2 is at Caesar's house. So it's in the middle of the night on the early morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning on the Ides of March. And Caesar's awake too. He says, thrice, 3 times, hath Calpurnia in her sleep cried out, help ho, they murder Caesar. So Calpurnia is having nightmares, basically. And so Caesar wakes up his servant and tells him to go to the priests and have them do a sacrifice. Now, I don't know exactly how this is supposed to work, but they go out in the yard and get a goat. They split him open, look at his guts, and basically that tells you what kind of a day you're going to have. It obviously tells you what kind of day the goat's going to have. But anyway, so he sends them to do this sacrifice. And Calpurnia gets up, she comes out, and she says, you are not leaving this house today. Caesar says, of course I am. Why wouldn't I? And she says, I'm nervous. I've never been like this before. I don't stand on ceremonies, but there have been so many hints, so many clues that something bad is going to happen that you need to stay home. Of course, he doesn't want to seem like he's a coward or afraid or lazy or whatever, so he doesn't want to stay home. And she says, Calpurnia says, when beggars die, there are no comets seen. The heavens themselves blaze forth the death of princes. So she said all this stuff, the storms, the soothsayer, all of the things that have happened, they don't happen because some Joe guy on the street is gonna die. It's only a big deal when these kind of hints come out. And so you're the biggest deal in town right now, and so you are the one that should be watching out. Caesar says, cowards die many times before their death. The valiant never taste of death but once. So he's saying that if he backs down because he's afraid, he dies a little bit every time he does that. But if you're valiant and you face the world head on, you only die one time, which you basically end up dead at the end anyway. But still, man logic. So the servant comes back, and again, quick turnaround. The priests have done the sacrifice. So they took this goat out of the yard, split him open, look at his guts, and they say you should not go to work because they opened this beast up and there was not a heart. He didn't have a heart, which of course is totally impossible, but they couldn't see the heart anyway. And so they think that's a bad sign and you should probably not go to work. Caesar says, danger knows full well that Caesar is more dangerous than he. So Caesar is more dangerous than danger. We are lions, 2 lions littered in one day, and I the elder and more terrible. So even this does not make him want to stay home. He is still planning on going to work. Calpurnia says, you are a fool. Please, please, I am literally begging you on my knees. Please, please let me prevail in this and stay home. Finally, Caesar gives in and says, okay, fine. Mark Antony shall tell them I am not well, and I will stay home. So he agrees that he will stay home and not go to work. At that time, knock, 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 Decius Brutus, remember, unicorn in the tree. So he shows up. It's his job to get Caesar to go to the Synod. He shows up right at the time that Caesar has decided he's not going to go. So Decius is like, oh, okay. So could you tell me, Caesar, why you're not going to work, just so that they don't laugh at me, and think I'm crazy? And he said, you know what? I'm Caesar, and I don't owe them an explanation. If I don't want to go to work, I don't go to work. That's just kind of the way things are. But you're my friend, and so I will tell you. Calpurnia, my wife, has this dream. She dreamt tonight that she saw my statue, which like a fountain with 100 spouts did run pure blood, and many lusty Romans came smiling and did bathe their hands in it. So she saw this statue, and instead of water coming out of it like a fountain, it was blood. And the Romans were bathing their hands in it. They were like, yeah, Caesar's blood. And she thought that was a bad sign. So she convinced him to stay home. And Decius, who thinks very quickly on his feet, said, oh, that's not a bad sign. That's a great sign. That's good news. That signifies that from you great Rome shall suck reviving blood, and that great men shall press for tincture, stains, relics, and cognizance. So that's not a bad sign. That means that your blood, your family lineage, remember how badly Caesar wants an heir, will revive Rome, and people will love you so much that they will be like trying to sell locks of your hair on eBay and stuff, and they will just love you so much. They'll want any piece of you that they can get because they love you so much and you have done so much for Rome. Caesar is super pompous and arrogant, and so when he hears that, he's like, yeah, of course that's what it means. Calpurnia, I can't believe I ever listened to you, you crazy woman. Obviously, they love me. And so, sealed deal. Decius is like, so also, they were going to give you a crown today. Do you really want them to say, break up the Senate till another time when Caesar's wife shall meet with better dreams? Who wears a toga in this family? Honestly, seriously, come on. And that, of course, seals it even more. And Caesar says, ugh, I'm so embarrassed I even listened to you ever, Calpurnia, you dumb lady. And so he is going to go after all. So, this is the time when Brutus, Ligarius, Metellus Cimber, Casca, Trebonius, Cinna, and Publius all show up at Caesar's house. Let me just tell you, if all of your friends show up at your house to walk with you to school, you should be concerned. It's not good. It could be bad news. It's suspicious for sure. But Caesar does not see it at all. So he's just like, hey, look, everybody loves me. Everybody wants to be around me. I'm so cool. And so he says, cool, fine. Welcome, come in. Hey, and he talks to everybody, whatever. And they are getting ready to walk with him to work. And he says to Trebonius, hey, I need to talk to you about something. Make sure you catch me later. Stay close to me so I don't forget. And Trebonius is like, yeah, I will be close to you. So close that your best friend shall wish I had been further. So he's kind of like hinting at the plot and at the fact that they're going to stab him. Anyway, so they get ready and they're going to leave and they go to the Senate. So, Act 2, Scene 2. Blank said that Blank cried out in her sleep, help ho, they murder Caesar. Caesar says that Calpurnia, his wife, is having bad dreams. Number 40. Blank told the servant to command the blank to ask the gods immediately. So Caesar is the one giving orders at this point, and he told the servants to command the priests to do the sacrifice to ask the gods. Next, Blank tried to persuade Blank to stay at home. So Calpurnia gets up and she tries to persuade Caesar to stay home. He refused, agreed reluctantly, or could not decide after Blank told him about the evil omens. So The priest sent the message that the beast had no heart and whatever, and he still refuses. So number 42, he refused after the priest told him about the evil omens. So number 43, when blank arrived and learned that blank was not going to the Senate, the former was pleased, terrified, or disturbed. So this is the time when Decius shows up. Decius shows up. It is his job to make sure that Caesar's going to go to work. Caesar says, hey, I'm not going to go to work, so he needs to get on it. So when Decius arrived and learned that Caesar was not going to the Senate, the former was disturbed. He's not happy about it, and he's not terrified because he's got a plan, but he's like, it could have been easier, but he's got a plan. All right, so that was number 43. 44. Blank explained to Decius, Caesar, he's the one talking, explained to Decius that Calpurnia dreamed that she had seen his statue spouting blood. Number 45. After Decius explained the dream was a good omen, not a bad omen, everything's good, it's great, Caesar agreed that it seemed reasonable, that he was right, obviously. So again, number 45. After Decius explained the dream was a good omen, Caesar agreed that the former's explanation seemed reasonable. Number 46, Decius reminded Caesar that the Senate planned to offer him a crown. They were going to give him the crown, not in Italy, but everywhere else, and he didn't want to skip work on that day. One adjective which applies to Decius. Timid means nervous. That's not here. Brave. He's not especially brave. I don't know why that would be brave. Plausible means believable. So that's a good one. Would anybody else have fallen for it? Caesar's pretty gullible. Maybe not. I don't know. Dignified. Well, it's not exactly dignified to make up a big lie so you can kill somebody, so I'd say no. Shrewd means tricky. He's definitely being kind of tricky here, so I would say plausible or shrewd. Either of those would be fine. Two adjectives which apply to Caesar. Suspicious? No. It would be great if he were suspicious. It might mean that he would actually pay attention, but he's not. Confident? Yes. Caesar is very, very confident, and that's one of his downfalls, is that he does not see that he can be hurt. He thinks that he's great, and that's great, except when you ignore everything else because of it. Cowardly? No, he's not a coward. Gentle? No, he basically tells his wife she's an idiot, and that's not very gentle. Gullible? Yeah, definitely. Gullible means that you fall for stuff, and Caesar definitely fell for this whole thing with Decius, because Decius is basically trying to get him to the Senate so he can get stabbed. So he definitely fell for that. When blank remarked that he would be so near that blank's friends would wish that he had been farther, he returned to the blank. So this is when Caesar is talking to Trebonius at the end. When Trebonius remarked he would be so near that Caesar's friends would wish he had been farther, he referred to the plot. Okay, cool. Now, we have a very short little scene 3. And scene 3 is just this guy named Artemidorus. Artemidorus is just a guy. And somehow he found out about the conspiracy. I don't know how or whatever, but he does know. And so he writes a letter to Caesar. And he is going to stand on the road on the way to the capital and give Caesar this letter. And the letter says every one of the conspirators' names, and that there is but one mind in all these bent against Caesar. Basically, these guys are out to get you today. And so if Caesar reads this letter, he will know exactly what's going to happen. And if he doesn't read it, he will be screwed. So he is going to stand on the road to give this letter. So Artemidorus had prepared a paper warning Caesar against the plot or the conspirators. He wanted to give him the paper as Caesar passed on the way to the Senate. So that's 50 and 51. There is a scene 4. There are no questions in the study guide about it for some reason, but it's just Portia at the end on the morning of the Ides of March, and she is with Lucius, and her personality has totally changed. Before, she was like, I'm so tough, I stabbed myself just to prove it. And now she's like, oh, I'm so worried, I'm so sad, blah, 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 blah. He even puts how hard it is for a woman to keep counsel and how weak the heart of a woman is. You know, this is not a time that was very empowering for women. So obviously, she's being depicted in this way because that's how they thought about women. They didn't even let women act in these plays. A man or boy would have played the part of Lucius or of Portia, because they didn't even respect women enough to let them play parts of women. So this is kind of just like a little dig, a little macho dig by Shakespeare. But it also proves that she knows what's going on, because Brutus said that he would tell her what was going to happen. But we didn't actually see that happen. But we can tell by the way she's acting that she knows, because she wants Lucius to go to the Senate and look at Brutus and then come back and tell her how he looks. And she's not telling him why. He doesn't get it. He's like, are you crazy? But she's concerned about his safety, obviously. So we know that she knows what's going on. And that's the end of Act 2. There, like I said, there's no study guide questions there. Act 2, review and assess, you do not do because you don't have the textbook. Build vocabulary, again, same basic setup. It gives you a spelling strategy at the top. It's talking about the Latin word spirare, which means to breathe, and the root S-P-I-R. I took 4 years of Latin in high school, so I think this is interesting. I'm sure you don't, but it's pretty easy. You can figure it out. It gives you words here, basically to look up the definitions of. Use dictionary.com, a real dictionary, whatever. And then again, it has a word bank, and it's asking you to basically figure out the connection between these two words, and then find a similar connection down here. This is something they do a lot on like standardized tests. Ask you to basically look at two words, figure out their connection, and then find a matching set. So that's why they put that kind of stuff on here. So there's that. Next has a grammar thing. Who and whom, whose and whose. Again, it gives you the information you need up here at the top, and then just asks you to choose the correct form here. The writing application just asks you to write sentences about Shakespeare using these grammar forms. So should be pretty easy. Again, do the best you can. It's all about trying here. All right. The reading strategy worksheet that you have gives you some information at the top. It's about reading blank verse. When you read blank verse, you don't read it like roses are red, violets are blue. You don't break at the end of every line. You just keep reading like you would a book with paragraphs or whatever, because that's the way it's intended to be read. You follow the punctuation and everything like you always do. So this worksheet just tells you about that and explains. It just makes more sense to do that. Then the second thing it says is translate unfamiliar words. The last act you had something about using text aids. Again, if you don't know what the word means, figure that out, and then that'll help you figure out what's going on. And so it's asking you to go back to that part where Brutus says swear an oath, and put it in your own words. So again, go back in the video where I put it in my own words and use that to help you figure out how to put it in your own words. Don't just write down my words, write down your words, but you can use my words to help you figure out what you want to say. Then we have another worksheet about blank verse. It tells you about how we use stressed and unstressed syllables and stuff like that to create the iambs and the iambic pentameter and whatever. Just read through it. It's just something to help you understand why Shakespeare did it and how it would have affected the understanding of the reading. So do the best you can here. It's really kind of like math. So if you're not an English person and you are a math person, then this might be easier for you than some of the other stuff. And that's it for Act 2. Okay, so any questions about Act 2, send me an email, whatever. I am going to do the Zoom meeting still, but I don't have very good service and not very many people show up. So I said I was going to give the answers to the packet in there, but I'm doing it in these videos instead. So I'll let them know that and let you know that, whatever. But if you have questions, feel free to email me, whatever. But again, The most important thing is that you are trying. Use everything that you have, myshakespeare.com, the text, all the videos on there, the translations, whatever. Use it to figure it out the best of your ability. The most important thing about Shakespeare, the reason I teach it and the reason I think it's so important, is because you open this book and you look at it and you say, oh my God, that's basically another language, I can't figure it out. But we go through it in so many different ways and talk about it and figure it out. And by the end, you can figure it out. And that's the point. Taking something that's hard that you can't figure out and giving you the tools to be able to figure it out on your own. Okay, so this year you are uniquely challenged by this remote learning to figure it out on your own. And that's what I want you to walk away with. You will not be asked, more than likely, out on the street about Julius Caesar, but you will be asked in some time in your life to take something you totally don't understand and figure it out. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is give you tools to figure out how to figure things out. Okay, so there's my pitch. All right, that's the end of Act 2. See you in Act 3.